Gary Erickson, who is the managing partner of Executive Search Partners. Gary has a long track record of being a technologist and also a cybersecurity guy, since he has a consulting company, or I wouldn't call it a headhunter, let's say job placement for CIOs, CISOs, and I know those are acronyms, but that's the security folks that actually keep the companies safe. But we've been covering a lot of that on how to do the resume and how to get your job. And we wanted to freshen this up a little bit. Let me ask you a quick question, Gary. How would you guess that when you're talking to a senior IT leader, they sometimes ask your advice about alternate careers? How do that? Does that happen very often?
I we do just sort of as a friendly service to people. People will call us up, we'll get to know them, and they might ask us, all right, well, I've been doing this for a long time. Maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that. What other choices do I have? And I have to give them, for the most part, some fairly sobering advice um, about, what is the reality of making it. Just as a background, at one point in my career when I was a CIO, I said, I'm getting tired of this kind of stuff. I think I want to go be a stockbroker, because we all doing some sort of investing, and started talking to people, and I found out that I would probably have to take a very significant pay cut for a number of years before I would catch up to where I was. So that sort of cooled my interest.
And probably your wife was not in favor of that either, right? So,
I don't think I got even that far with the discussion. I
ah,
knew what the reception would be.
oh, okay. All right, cool. Matt?
So what are some of the options that you have people consider if they're looking at a career change?
Well, the most obvious one that a lot of people in IT think about is consulting. Can I be a consultant, right? And what does that take? And there's some pros and cons of doing that. Sometimes people say, "Hey, I've been offered a job at a startup. What do you think about that?" And then there's the other things. What if I wanted to completely get out of working for somebody else, and I wanted to start my own business, or I wanted to maybe go into franchising? Gary, what do you think of those kind of things? And I usually start by asking them a few pithy questions about, what are you trying to do?
All
And I
right.
can get into that
Yeah,
general
why don't you
advice
go
if
ahead
you
and
like.
tackle those? Feel free.
Okay. So the first thing I ask, and I think both of you, both Matt and Mike, you guys went off on your own. You had sort of corporate careers for a while and then decided to go do that. What I'm going to turn the tables just briefly on both of you. Why did you both decide to get out of the cushy life of the well-paid reporter business who had all sorts of expense accounts and interesting opportunities to interview people?
Yeah, well, the well-paid part, not so much. But no one goes into, I mean, that's the old, no one goes into journalism for the money. That's for sure, I'm telling you.
Mhm.
But I did 20 years of newspaper, and I just got tired of having five or six bosses complaining that each one wanted me to do something different, and I got tired of getting jerked around. And so the other thing, being a technology writer, I saw the handwriting on the wall, and I kept saying to the folks at the Detroit Free Press, we just can't be wedded to paper anymore. We have to be communications people. And I was a heretic, of
Yep.
course. One thing led to another, and I departed. But part of it is they booted me out the door because I argued with them too much. But for me, that was a great thing because then I got a chance to start my own business, and done. It's been a real roller coaster ride. But yeah, I can't think of anything else I'd rather do. Matt, what do you have to
There,
say?
there you go. There you go. You just
Well,
said something that's really critical.
my experience was somewhat different because I was more of an entrepreneur at WWJ. And when they were cleaning up CBS Radio to sell that division off, they decided that they no longer wanted to have those kind of independent, semi-independent newsletters within the broadcasting station. So I was given a choice to stay on at WWJ as a part-time person, um, or to leave, and so I chose to leave, and I wound up, as a lot of former journalists do. I've seen this happen a lot. I wound up in nonprofit PR, first for the Engineering Society of Detroit and then for Lawrence Tech. So, I mean, that was the path I took. It wasn't entirely voluntary, but looking back on it now, I mean, it really improved the quality of my life. I had a whole lot less headaches.
And
Yeah.
I think both of you have just hit the nail on the head with, you start asking people when we talk to people about that, if they're trying to think of an alternative career, the first problem I say, what problem are you trying to solve? All right. Are you looking to increase your income? Maybe, right? A lot of people say if I do a startup, I can get really rich or start my own life. Or if somebody would just promote me to the CIO position, I get all those stock options, I'd be really well off. Maybe you're stuck in a career you don't like. You're working for a bunch of bosses. You want to be your own boss, or maybe you just say, I've been working 60 hours a week and I just can't sustain that kind of background. So those are all good reasons. And what I usually then ask people, I said, well, when you daydream, it's the green field approach. If you could do whatever you want, what would that be and what would it look like? And that starts some interactive discussions around, how do you think about your career and what are you really good at? What do you like to do? How do you translate those particular skills? And there's a lot of interaction that you can have with people thinking about the skills they have and how they can apply to other fields. And there are books written on that. I'm not saying I'm an expert on that. I think there's one, I'm trying to remember, how green is your pasture or something like that. And then the final question that I ask people, which is always the capstone question, can you afford to make a change?
Yeah.
There lies the rub. Because as a startup, you're just living check to check. I have some experience on this. And even if you love what you're doing, if you can't pay your bills, I mean, it's a real, I don't know, it's a challenge. You have to be, you can't let no get you down. You have to be very passionate about it, or
Yes.
you'll fail miserably,
Well, the other thing that I've noticed, because that was my introduction to being a business writer way back in the day, is they always start business writers out covering small business and enterprise formation, and that's the one thing that gave me a real respect for entrepreneurship was taking that leap of faith. And I always wanted to ask people, how did you get your first couple customers? Because that's really the key. Once you have at least some recurring revenue, then you have an idea that you might just be able to make a go of this.
Yep. Well, you both have said that you wouldn't do anything else. You like the fact that you decided to go an independent path and forge your own way. And that's really and I eventually did the same thing myself. And it really feels very, very good. I left corporate CIO-dom, if you will, and started my own IT consulting company. And it was a big decision because I was making pretty good money as a CIO in a corporation with nice sort of stock options and bonuses, and wasn't filthy rich or didn't come from a well-off family with a trust fund. This was a real leap of faith to be able to say, okay, I can go try this for a while. I can put some money into it. At the time, both my partner and I, George Moylan and I, each put $50,000 in. Well, my $50,000 back in 2000, I'm trying to remember what year it was, 1996, came from me remortgaging my house.
Wow.
Well, entrepreneurs do that a lot. I heard that from a lot of entrepreneurs, but go ahead. Sir.
Yeah. And exactly. And there's some pretty good podcasts. Guy Raz has a podcast on how I built this, which is a really fun thing to listen to, how all these very successful entrepreneurs were such overnight successes. I mean, it only took them 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? Or 15 years. Kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I like to say to people. Hey, I'm an overnight success. This took me 50 years, but
Yeah. So, the other thing that I looked at each of these opportunities like consulting. Typically, a lot of people that talk to me say, what if I wanted to go into consulting, right? And do that as a job. And I thought I'd sort of list sort of the pros and cons of that. I could do pros and cons of each one, but we'll run out of time. But consulting is the number one thing that I hear from people. Starting my own business is number two. And consulting is sort of like starting your own business. I'm taking the skills that I have. I've got something that I can get money for from customers. And it's pretty easy to get into because you're using your own skills. If you've got respect from previous bosses or customers, maybe you can get some gigs from them during the time, and may not cost you any money. Maybe you can completely transition into that. The problem with consulting, though, is it's really hard to maintain that kind of consulting activity. I mean, sure, you get your first 2 or 3 gigs, maybe, but then how do you get your 4th and your 5th and the 6th? Many of the people who've gotten in consulting say, I started out great and then everything dropped off. Well, it's because you haven't been out there in the marketplace getting people to know your brand and who you are and building relationships with other people that could be your future customers.
You're only
And the other thing,
your latest contract, right? You know, so
yeah, exactly. And how are you going to get your next one while you're working full time on your current one? You know, and how do you write the proposals and how do you get on the network with people and do the sales part of consulting? And a lot of former CIOs are really lousy salespeople because they're technical people. They're not relationship people. They're the people that like to get down and dirty and make things work out of technology.
that's putting it kindly, but we won't go into that. I've had a lot of experience dealing with techies, and they just don't have, in general, now there are exceptions, interpersonal skills. Like you say, they really don't. I mean, I do my best work at cocktail parties because then I go around work the crowd, but that's, you know, but I'm not a techie per se, you know. So
Yeah, but both of you guys got into journalism and got, you know, probably did it because you like to write, obviously, but you like to talk to people, you like to learn things, you like to ask questions, and you like to sort of put things together, and that's what you both are still doing.
oh, we're running out of time. Well, why don't you talk about your day job now real quick and how people can reach in? And I'm sure you'd be able to, happy to provide some advice to folks on those topics of whether they want to be a consultant, or want to start a business or whatever. Can they reach out to you for advice or what?
Sure. They want to contact me. It's G Erickson at execsearchpartners.com. You can go to our website, execsearchpartners.com. You can find a phone number and an email address there too.